ancient biblical prophets wrote about the future. Today, theologians are poring over those scriptures with a firm belief that their prophecies are coming to pass. Journey now into the world of eschatology on Prophecy in the News with author and lecturer J.R. Church.
In our January 2003 edition of our magazine Prophecy in the News, we have an article by Gary Stearman entitled Project Jehovah. It's a fascinating study, and it's very important for Christians to understand today. Gary, tell us about it.
J.R., there really was a project, a top secret project, back in the early 50s during the Eisenhower administration, known as Project Jehovah. That was its code name under the general operating instructions of a project called Code Word White Pebble. This was a top secret operation, and it came out of the whole situation with the crash of that unidentified flying object at Roswell, New Mexico, that was immediately placed under secret wraps by the then Army Air Force. Now, JR, let me say right quick that we're not talking sci-fi here, and we're not talking necessarily about a tale that's designed to elicit excitement or intrigue, but rather we're trying to bring some clarity to things that are written in the Bible about the latter days. And you know, one of the signs that we're here and that these are the latter days and that we're the last generation is the fact that Satan is beginning to operate openly. And in fact, that's the subtitle of the article, Project Jehovah. The subtitle is How Satan Controls Human Government. And let me say in just a few words right up front, JR, that it's my belief, after studying this thing for years, that the Roswell crash was not an accident. It was a designed operation. It was a great deception perpetrated by none other than Satan himself to dupe our government and to produce, and by the way, it was successful in producing a secret intergovernment that is classified as above top secret.
Okay, before we go any further, let's establish whether there was or was not a crash of a spacecraft of some kind.
Yes. And by the way, that's fairly easy to do. There are a number of people who are now very old. Many of them have just passed on in the last 2 or 3 years, and they've given deathbed statements to the effect that they were involved in the reclamation of wreckage, which they swore to be alien wreckage, and by the way, the reclamation of anywhere between 3 and 5 small alien bodies. I think everybody's heard of this story by now, and it was published in all the papers. It made the national radio news, and then immediately it was trounced by the government and branded as a trumped-up story. And yes, they substituted another story for that, saying that these ranchers out in New Mexico had found the wreckage of a weather balloon. And, you know, there's a now famous picture of General Roger Ramey holding a press conference, and he's kneeling on the floor in front of the wreckage of a weather balloon with another gentleman who's, by the way, Brigadier General Thomas Dubose, and these two generals gave a press conference in which they stood before the wreckage of what they said was a weather balloon and said, no, this UFO stuff was never true. But JR, General Ramey is holding in his right hand, and by the way, we're going to show you the picture so you can see for yourself, he's holding in his right hand a teletype, which was picked up by the camera that day, and which hasn't been readable until very recently, because now we have computers that can go in, can blow up, and can analyze something that is very tiny on film. And a couple of people have analyzed the contents of that teletype held by General Ramey.
And what does it say?
Well, it says, and I'm holding a copy here, it says, urgent, Headquarters Army Air Force, Washington, 8 July 1947. From the 8th Headquarters, 8th Army Air Force, subject Roswell. Quite readable, as a matter of fact. And it says, Fort Worth Army Air Force acknowledges that a, quotes, disc is next new find west of the cordon. And let me just quickly say that the Army Air Force went into the Roswell crash area. They cordoned off the wreckage zone, and here this teletype says that just west of the cordon they found a disc. At the location was a wreck near the operation at the ranch. The victims of the wreck you forwarded to the team at Fort Worth, Texas. By the way, that was the headquarters of the 8th Army Air Force Group. The Roswell 509th Bomb Group was the very group that had the Enola Gay, the B-29 that dropped the atom bomb on Hiroshima. And then the teletype goes on to say, aviators in the, quotes, disc, they will ship for A-1 8th Army by B-29 Special Transport or by C-47, Wright Air Force, and then the words are here, hard to read, at Roswell. Assure that CIC team said that this misstatement of the story, and we think late today, the words here are slightly unintelligible on the original. Next sent out a story of weather balloons. And they say this would fare better, and then it becomes unintelligible. Well, right here in this teletype, you have the story of the crash. You have the story of where the quote-unquote aviators within the disc are to be sent, Wright Air Force Base, and the substitution of a new story, the weather balloon story. And that was in that teletype being held right in the hand of Roger Ramey. It's been on that photograph since 1947.
That's amazing.
It is.
Well, that means then that it really was a disc and that there really were aliens or some bodies of little people of some kind in that craft.
Now, JR, we have to ask the question, as Christians, if this is true, and it seems to be true, I mean, there are literally dozens of people stepping forward now. If it's true that there was a crash disk and little quote-unquote aliens, do we as Christians believe that the Bible anywhere states that Earth is going to be visited by aliens from outer space in the latter days? And the answer is absolutely not. The Bible is very clear on this, but the Bible does speak of a certain type of alien, and it refers to these aliens under two headings, either as fallen angels or as demons. And so we conclude that what was going on here is a grand deception being perpetrated upon the leaders of our government by Satan, his minions, fallen angels, demons. They'd carefully arranged themselves to appear as aliens from outer space, and the net effect of this was the creation of a secret government known as the National Security Agency. Also, the CIA was formed at that very time under Harry S. Truman and later under Dwight David Eisenhower. And under Eisenhower is where we're going to come to the story of Project Jehovah. But JR, this is an amazing story.
Okay, so what we have here is a UFO crash at the right spot and at the right time, which means that it had to be orchestrated.
Yes.
We've got 6,000 years. Anywhere on the planet, this spacecraft could crash, but it never has, and just happens to crash in the years following Hiroshima, near the very base and the research area where the atomic bomb was created and tested and then flown to Japan.
Yes.
At this very spot, we have an organized, planned crash for the purpose of our government getting its hands on this craft that was evidently something that was built in another dimension, not in another galaxy somewhere. This craft was built and given, so to speak, to our government, and there are some of the things that our government has done since then that proves that this is absolutely the devil's way of getting control of our government and eventually of all the governments of the world. This is a part of his plan.
Now, before we go into the biblical background of all this, let's just say, JR, that the names involved in this whole operation called Project Jehovah were names that people who are students of World War II will come to very quickly, like General Roscoe Hillenkoetter, General Nathan F. Twining, General Hoyt S. Vandenberg, General Dwight D. Eisenhower, J. Robert Oppenheimer, Albert Einstein, J.R., all the big names are mentioned in conjunction with these strange events.
Now, where did these names arise? On the internet?
These names, by the way, come to us through a series of leaked documents which bear the stamp and seal of a project, an above top secret project called MJ-12 or Majestic 12 or sometimes simply Majestic. And these documents are being leaked now within the last few years.
And it is called Project Jehovah. Now these men, some of them you've mentioned, Einstein, Oppenheimer, they're Jewish. They know what the Bible says. And they chose to name this project Project Jehovah. There's a special reason for that, and we'll tell you when we return in just a moment. At the same time Gary was researching this Project Jehovah article for our magazine, I was doing research on chapter 12 of Revelation. And we were not coordinating this. But I came to the part where there was a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, John tells us in Revelation 12. And he was cast out unto the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And when I read that, I thought, oh, you know, I can just see these UFOs blinking into our dimension, and all of these UFO flaps in the past, they've been able to blink back out again. Mm-hmm. But when this happens, when they are cast out of heaven to the earth, they are cast out of a heavenly realm, another dimension, and end up in our atmosphere. They're not cast out to the moon. They're not cast out to Mars. They're cast out to the earth. So I can see them blinking in, and they can't go back. Mm. They're stuck in this dimension. And so I called Gary and I said, Gary, let me just run this past you, what I came to here. And he says, that's strange. I just wrote that same thing in my article.
It's very true. And by the way, the article had to do with Project Jehovah and the dark powers.
Yes.
Paul says we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, rulers of darkness in heavenly places. That is just beyond the dimension of our sight. Yes. But JR, they seem to have the ability to wink into our dimension and appear to people before they wink out again. And since 1947, they seem to be rapidly developing the ability to appear here physically. And I think it's interesting that Roswell happened July 3rd, 1947, exactly simultaneously with the foundation of national Israel in the modern days. Satan knows that he has but a short time to work.
Now, if they're going to blink into this dimension and then stuck here and cannot blink away, let's go back to 1947 to that UFO crash.
Right.
That was the first vehicle that blinked into this dimension and can't go back.
Exactly. And it was, let's call it a grand forgery. I think Satan has a very firm grasp of how men think. And he sits around and devises methods for tricking people into believing fictitious things, like that there really are visitors coming here from other galaxies, and maybe to speak of the modern fiction, that they may even be our creators coming back to check up on their work. But in fact, Satan knows how modern man thinks, and he wanted to insinuate himself upon our government at a very crucial time in history, JR. Right after World War II, the military had just dropped the A-bomb, and all of this was developed right around and nearby Roswell, and there appeared and was quickly covered up and subsumed by the National Security Agency this apparent visitation. And by the way, with the wreckage came high-tech artifacts, which were subsequently then parceled out, and the word is coming down to us now that they were re-engineered to give us many of the modern inventions they have, that we have developed today.
Yes, let's talk about some of those,
some of these would be fiber optics. The 1947 crashed craft, according to documents that have been leaked recently, actually had fiber optics in it. It had devices that we can only brand today, with our knowledge, as solid-state devices or printed circuit boards. It had all kinds of these wonderful little devices in it, which were farmed out to corporations and then subsequently released to the public as new inventions. And to me, this is clearly a case of perhaps our government, our leaders, our Fortune 500 people almost selling their soul to the devil for alien technology, thinking that it may have come from another galaxy or something.
Now, in this article, you have described some of these, for example, the printed circuit boards and the fiber optics. Do you have written in this article somewhere you put your finger on it and read us from the 1947
Well, from a
terminology
1947, yeah,
like?
For example, here's a letter that was sent to the commanding general of the Air Force Air Materiel Command. Quote, we found, quote, flight instruments and controls activated by optical waveguide fibers similar to glass rods, except they are flexible and have plastic cladding wrap. Well, JR, today we'd call that fiber optics. But they didn't have the word fiber optics in 1947. It's really fascinating.
Now, fiber optics were invented or developed by our aerospace industry just a few years after that, before the 1960s. I remember when Bell Laboratories came out with the transistor, I think around late 1950s, and they demonstrated how this thing was going to make the vacuum tube obsolete. Now, this craft had that in it, and it was described. And so, evidently, our government had it back engineered, and out came all of these things such as lasers, fiber optics, printed circuit boards,
solid-state devices, LEDs, which everybody's got an LED flashlight today. All of these marvelous things seem to have come from technology that was reverse engineered. And JR, we're running out of time. I don't want to allow the time to go by before we make a point. The point we want to make today is this is a biblical event, because the Bible speaks of the latter-day incursion upon earth of demons, of fallen angels and their minions, whose job it is to deceive men, to cause them to follow certain courses of action. And following 1947, and this code word white pebble, in which, and I quote here, the National Security Agency is given the job of, quote, code breaking of an alien codex and historical research of the Central Intelligence Agency's program and Department of Defense UFO Identification Detection Project Firestone. Decoding an alien language, understanding alien technology, JR. And then finally, Project Jehovah, and let me quickly come to my next very interesting document. This document from General Nathan Twining's headquarters to the Air Defense Command says we need to document, quote, the incident report on flying discs at the, quote, proving ground in New Mexico. General Nathan Twining himself. All of these events were swirling around the heads of various people. And finally, and I include this in the article, and there's so much here that we can't talk about today. Here is a memo, November 4th, 1953, from General Dwight D. Eisenhower. I cannot overemphasize the need for the utmost discretion and understanding in exercising the authority set forth in these documents. Accordingly, I'd like you to find some way to brief the various authorizing commanders on the subject to ensure that all are of one mind as to the letter and spirit of these instructions. And then this goes on to talk about Majestic 12, and I quote again, I specifically want Project Jehovah Director Professor Albert Einstein and Dr. Robert Oppenheimer to inject any useful comments to the briefing, as they are the most informed on the physics related to the subject. And I could go even further, but JR, this is Project Jehovah. To name something the name of God. Dwight D. Eisenhower was raised a Christian. Robert Oppenheimer raised a Jew. Albert Einstein, they know who Jehovah is, as you said a moment ago.
Amazing. Now, you've got to understand that for years, the scientific community has told us that we evolved out of some mud puddle somewhere.
Yeah.
But now, many are changing their minds and saying that we were seeded here. Our DNA is too complicated to have evolved. We were seeded by aliens in a spacecraft somewhere who came from some far galaxy and put everything, plant life, animal life, human life, on this earth, and they're checking in on us. And of course, this is a vast subject, so we're going to be dealing with it more and more in weeks to come. If you'd like to have a copy of our magazine, January 2003, on Project Jehovah, call the number at the bottom of your screen. We'll be back in just a moment.
I'd like to talk to you for a moment about an exciting new offer from Prophecy in the News, and that offer is the Zondervan Illustrated Bible Backgrounds Commentary. Beautifully bound, beautifully produced, top-notch scholarship, and every page of these 4 volumes covering Matthew to Revelation is in full 4-color process. You're going to find an amazing array of maps, charts, artists' conceptions, sidebars, easy to read study aids, and as I said, the scholarship, well, Clinton Arnold, the general editor, Talbot School of Theology, you're going to find the Bible interpretation right on the mark. Now, this is different from anything Zondervan has done before. Well, let's look, for example, at Volume 1, page 172. Now, this is the Matthew study, and you'll find in here the story of the crucifixion of Christ at this point, but you'll also find a picture of the potter's field, Akeldama. You'll also find a sidebar about Barabbas and the thieves who were crucified with Christ, talking about the cultural ferment of the day, the fact that those thieves were really revolutionaries. You're also going to find a sidebar about the life of Pontius Pilate, including, by the way, the famous Pontius Pilate inscription, photograph of that. In short, you're going to receive a broad background, all the subjects that impinge upon the crucifixion of Christ. That's what's meant by Bible Backgrounds Commentary. Now, normally the Zondervan Illustrated Bible Backgrounds Commentary retails for $159.95. At Prophecy in the News, we're going to make it available to you for only $134.95, and as an added inducement to ordering right now, we're going to include a free bonus, and that is the 3 VHS videotape set right in front of me. It's called Deciphering Daniel. It contains 12 studies, one for each of the 12 chapters of Daniel. It's an exciting study, and JR and I go into depth in these 3 VHS videotapes. Normally $49.95, yours absolutely free. Plus, we're going to also give you a free subscription, 1-year subscription to Prophecy in the News, our monthly magazine, and that would be valued at $29.95 altogether. This would be a $240 value, yours for only the price of the Zondervan Illustrated Bible Backgrounds Commentary, and that's $134.95. This Zondervan publication is brand new. It's something very, very timely. Order today. Call the number on your screen right now.
We are living in the last days. Satan is about to make his grandstand upon planet Earth. He is manipulating the various governments through the UFO project that happened in 1947. He has turned our government into a black operations type government. Not all of the politicians in our government even know what's going on, but there is definitely a movement afoot, and has been for 40 years or more, to develop this one world government in order to bring everything down to planet Earth so that he can step in, as he will in Revelation chapters 12 and 13.
Well, J.R., Paul was right. We do wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against the powers in dark places. We're going to have more about this as time goes by.
So if you don't know Christ as your Savior, trust Him today. He alone can give you eternal life. This is J.R. Church and Gary Sturman. Until next time, keep looking up.
Prophecy in the News is a viewer-supported ministry sponsored by our many friends across America and in your area. For your gift of $10, you can receive a special edition of our current program on audio tape, or for a gift of $20, we'll send you our programs on videotape. For either order, call the 800 number on your screen right now.